everyone, good morning. My name's Dovere. I'm the chief Washington correspondent for Politico. Deal with politics and cybersecurity more now than I ever thought I would be, talking about cybersecurity as a person who writes about politics and government. We have a really good panel here today, but we don't have a lot of time. So I want to just jump right into it with you guys. How big of a problem do we have as a country with our government? What's going on in cybersecurity? And how ill-equipped is the government to deal with that problem?
Okay, I guess I'll start. Generally, when I'm speaking with government agencies, from my perspective, I try to figure out what they own and approximately what their coverage and what they know, so kind of like the delta between what they know and actually what they have. And usually it's about 10 times off. They think they have 1, they actually have 10, or they think they have 1,000, they actually have 10,000 or whatever. Which is a really bad thing because that's generally how I break in, a guy like me. I look for the things that you're not really protecting. When I talk to them about, okay, how do we get past that point and actually start getting coverage over this stuff and thinking about it or whatever, it's usually like a 2 to 3 year sales cycle. You got to work with whatever administration's in there currently, and then they got to pass a bill, and then, a year or two later, you can actually submit an RFP or whatever. It's probably the slowest moving enterprise I've ever seen.
And Chad, you were dealing with this at the FBI.
Yeah, so as the FBI CIO, Director Mueller asked me this one day. He said, are we prepared for a cyber war? And I said, we have to qualify that. If you're talking about the FBI, we don't have anything on the unclassified network, really, of any importance. Everything's on secret, top secret, air-gapped, military-grade encryption. So we're pretty prepared. The rest of the government, not so much. I think you've seen this, that this is true in industry as well. A lot of it's smoke and mirrors. It's just too many people with their fingers in the pie, too many things to protect. They haven't really prioritized what's important. They don't know what they have. They aren't doing the simple things. If you'll just have asset management, patch your stuff, have your malware defenses working, take away admin rights from people that don't need them. I mean, we're talking a few minor things, 80 to 85% of your problems will go away.
Do you find that people are even aware of the kinds of things? Do you have to walk them through basics, or how up to date are they in thinking about even what the kinds of problems there are out there?
Yeah, so again, I'm a recovering CIO, so I'm not going to badmouth my other CIOs and CISOs out in the world. Love all of you. But I am surprised that some CIOs I sit down with, it still is basics. You do not have to be a technologist to be a CIO, but you do have to have some fundamental understanding of what you do and how technology is going to help that mission and how you're going to protect those resources. But I do come across people that have no understanding at all, and that's surprising to me when I sit down and I have major company CIOs tell me, yeah, we only patch our servers once a year.
Right.
Wow, I mean, that's amazing. But it's not the one-off thing. It's happens a lot more than you would think.
And Theresia, from the looking at approaching this and trying to deal with the government, where does that leave you in your thinking on things?
Yeah, so unlike Robert and Chad, I don't actually do cybersecurity, I just invest in it. So what I would say is, so last year, the good news is last year, over $3 billion in venture capital went to fund technology, cybersecurity technology startups. It was the largest category of venture capital, period, and it was an all-time record. The bad news is, if you're out there trying to raise money from people like me, and you tell me that your first target market as a cybersecurity company is the government, you won't get money because of all the things that Robert and Chad were just talking about. It's great if it's your second or third or fourth market. Your first market, it's going to take too long. You're going to burn through my $5 million before you get that RFP. So that's the bad news as a citizen, right? As a citizen, I feel bad, but I have to be making money decisions. Yeah, so that's the reality.
And have you seen companies that have tried it? What's that experience that you've seen?
There have been a few companies, but a lot of them, they get to a certain size. Even if there are a few small companies that went after the government first, but they don't get to be breakout businesses until they get outside of that. Like way back in the day, you guys probably knew the Oakley System guys, right? Like they had like NSA, and so you can get to be a $20 or $30 million business, but to be a $200 million or $1 billion revenue company, you need to go after commercial contracts, right? So the commercial enterprise sectors will spend close to $80 billion on cybersecurity, various different services and technologies.
Yeah.
So.
And also, let's say you're in the process, you're actually interested in selling the government. Let's say you have your millions and you're just ready to go. The sales cycle is so long, it's hard to get a sales guy to stick around long enough to make the deal happen.
Well, can you just walk through what that process is actually like? In some.
I can't because I've never seen it successfully done at a small scale. I've only seen it done with very, very large enterprises like a Boeing or Lockheed or something.
The FAR is fundamentally broken. That's the Federal Acquisition Regulations. It is so complicated. There's so many myths about it. And it's very difficult to kind of break through that bureaucracy. I know this is terrible as an American, but a lot of times I waited for something bad to happen. I would wait for something in the world to go boom, and the director would look at me and go, Omni Domni, you are operating under the National Security Clause, which is a special part of the FAR.
Yeah.
You can buy anything you want. And I had them all ready to go. So my CFO and lawyers are in the corner throwing up, and I'm sitting there going, Daddy's going shopping, right? But you shouldn't have to do work that way. And these entrepreneurs, they want to know, how do I sell to the government?
Right.
It is a long sales cycle. If you try to go directly, you try to get your own contract vehicles, you're not going to win. You're not going to do it.
So how do you win?
Well, there's two major ways. One, you can partner with the large defense contractors that have those established relationships.
And give them 30 or 40% of your margin, by the way.
Well, that's an unfortunate part of that. Yes, you're correct. Or try to find those small minority-owned businesses that have special set-aside type of rules under the FAR. But those are your two paths that you have to really take.
Yeah, and when you're talking about like state government, which is a little different than federal, it's often a matter of getting through that contract vehicle, but that contract vehicle can't start until some deadline, and that can be multiple years out. It has to be voted on. Like, we know we want this product. We know we want you to work for that. We want that box in our network. We'll get it within 4 to 5 years from now. It's like there's not even a contest. You're not even a race at this point. You still can't get it to them. It's really frustrating.
The FAR is more about like redistributing. I mean, they say if you're an optimist, you say it's to have a fair and open procurement. If you're a pessimist, you're there to say, well, it's just to redistribute the money around. But the reality is, as government CIOs, they're forced to buy from all these different things and try to integrate them. So I can take a chassis from a Chevy, and I can take an engine from a Porsche, and I can take tires from a tractor and so forth, and I can get that car to go from point A to point B. Now, it's going to be a terrible ride. It's going to take me a lot longer to get it put together. It's going to cost you a lot of money, and it's not going to be a great experience, right? But that's what the FAR kind of forces you to do.
And Teresa, from an investment standpoint, you were talking about the margin that has to be given away when you're dealing with the defense contract. For the other route that Chad was talking about, is that appealing at all?
To be honest with you, I'm not familiar with any of my startups, and I've been investing in security companies for 15, 16 years that have. So I know that is a route. That's not one that they've taken.
Chad, do you see any impetus to move on the FAR, on changing the FAR at this point? Or, this is one of those things that in Washington just seems like it's going to be
so
locked
I
in.
came from Wall Street,
not,
right? I'm not a long-time gov. I came from Wall Street. I got hired at 34, so I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. There have been politicians that have reached out to me and other CIOs that came from industry to try to update the rules, but they never really follow through. Right. So here's my card. I will come to the Hill, and I will talk to you privately. I will talk to you publicly. You know, let's try to fix this. Because if you can't buy stuff, you can't fix stuff, right? It's that simple.
Do they have an appreciation of how deep the problem is with the FAR?
I'm not sure that they do. Maybe their staff does. Yeah. They're trying to get stuff done, and the staff is frustrated they can't get something bought. But I think if you're up there, you tend to be separated from that problem.
I think there's another problem too. A lot of times, let's say you come up with a new product idea or whatever, just getting it in front of the right person is extremely difficult. The FedBizOps website is arguably one of the worst websites ever built. It's really hard to navigate and find whatever you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to insert it. And it also might not be on that list. That might not be something they're currently looking to purchase because they've never heard of it before because you just invented it. So how do you give them the idea that they should take a look at it, even if you're not even allowed to contact them directly, or they kind of dissuade you and like, this isn't about whatever you're talking about, I've never heard of that this is about firewalls and you're doing some new thing or whatever. It's very challenging if you're just starting off as a new venture-backed company to educate them. You have to end-road them in weird ways just to get in the
If
room.
people contacted us, we met with you. Even if it was only 15 minutes, cup of coffee at 7:30 in the morning before we started the day, or 6:30 at night, before we drive home. There was a guy, his nickname was DARPA Dan. This is after I left the FBI. And I met with him once, great guy. And he actually instilled in his staff, and really the rest of the federal government should do this. We take public money. We're here, to serve the general public. If you are an American company and you ask for 30 minutes, you're required to give them that 30 minutes. If you get an email, you're required to respond within 24 hours. And I give him big kudos. I also give him kudos for a really cool name. DARPA Dan is a pretty cool name.
We need his email on the DARPA website, because if you actually go to DARPA right now, there's no obvious way to say, I've got something that is not listed on any of the 20 or 30 different categories in cyber or whatever. I mean, I'm just saying for the entrepreneurs starting off, it's actually really challenging.
You also have to, temper that with putting your email out there.
I was joking
because,
about
you'd get the emails from the ladies in the tinfoil hats, right? You've got to be careful.
Yeah, I was joking about that.
So obviously, with all the questions about Russia and everything, the political conversation is a lot about cybersecurity at the moment, except that there's not a lot of action on it. Leaving aside the Russia investigations that are, to one extent or another, going on in Washington, where do you see the hacking question going? Like, what are we going to be needing to be aware of, and how, given the problems that you've already mapped out about how you deal with government and its own technological capacity now, that hacking is moving much more quickly than the government response. What's that going to look like over these years ahead?
From a technical perspective,
Yeah.
let me take that one and then you can talk about the other pieces. I think what's going to happen is people are going to start amassing large databases of information. I've already started doing it. I see other hackers doing it too. Where if a new exploit comes out, I already know ahead of time which targets to attack, and I already know ahead of time where the websites of interest are, not just any website, but the specific ones I'm interested in. So as long as it, usually doesn't take more than an hour or two to reverse engineer a new exploit or whatever, figure out how to use it for your own purposes. So basically, as soon as you have the weaponized exploit, let's say it just came out in Metasploit or something, given their new changes to the Linux kernel that allow you to make more than 65,000 open connections at a second, which I know is technical stuff, but I can make basically as many connections outbound as I want at any given time from any machine. I can effectively hack every single vulnerable machine within seconds.
So as far as collecting large amounts of data on people, obviously I don't know anything about that. I have no comment. However, it's going to get worse, unfortunately. I mean, you got to look at the trends, right? You have to know where you've been to know where you're going. 20 years ago, why did people hack? It was for notoriety, right? I got up, on this website, I defaced it or whatever. Last 5 or 10 years, what's been the motivation? Money. What happens 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, which is where we're going, when people don't care if you know that you were in, they just want to burn your house down.
Yeah.
Cyber terrorism, when they really just don't care, they just want to disrupt. Think about our country losing power for more than, I've been talking the entire country, for more than 3 or 4 days. The fuel pumps stop working, the 18-wheelers don't move stuff around the country, panic ensues, you don't have clean water. Imagine that. And we've got
every major city is a food island, so there's no one grows food in cities, so you have to leave cities. It's kind of a major catastrophe if you lose power.
I think that's where we're going, and that to me is very scary.
We're going there. How quickly? What kind of horizon are you talking about?
Well, I mean, we already
like
know.
How worried are you about that happening? Is that something we're talking about in the next couple of years, or is that like 20 years from now? Probably not.
So
right?
again, my best stories I can't tell you, especially in front of
Right.
all these nice people,
Yeah.
right? But they
can keep
it's
a
been
secret.
reported.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh,
Just
sure.
between us.
You have things that are out in the press, that, hey, you have terrorist organizations overseas, you have criminal syndicates that are trying to recruit people with these skill sets or trying to get this tradecraft. We've got men and women, whether it's DHS or the military or You know, my last family with the FBI, I mean, these are men and women that are out there trying to stop bad things from happening. They're trying to put bad people away. They're trying to stop this stuff. And I always have to put out there, though, they also are trying to safeguard your civil liberties. Because I do get a lot of people that say, oh my gosh, you're collecting all this data, which I don't know anything about what you're talking about, okay? We don't do that kind of stuff.
Metadata only.
I still don't know what you're talking about. You know, these are people that are really tasked with doing some serious work, some hard work. It takes a lot of patience, and God bless them for what they do.
But Chad, let me ask a follow-up, because you mentioned this backstage. So how do we get, so if the procurement systems are broken, which we all agree that they are, so the cool new technology startups that are getting all this money have a hard time getting into the government, and then getting people like yourself, which is more unusual, or how do we get, frankly, how do we guys like Robert? So this is the other part of it, right? So those other groups you said are recruiting people.
Yep.
What's our government, what can we do about sort of changing the recruitment piece, right? So there's only a couple different ways to get this cybersecurity talent and knowledge in there. You can buy it, or you can buy it in the form of people. And are we doing anything
hack
there?
it.
Yeah.
Or they can hack it.
Are we starting to be more creative in how we employ people like Robert?
Chad, as you think about your answer, think about it as a 1-minute answer. Okay?
I have the right to remain silent, lack the ability. So we are trying. I think that the new administration has an opportunity to change some of the rules, bring some of those former CIOs that are longtime govies and people that came from industry, and let them explain how they had to buy things. How could they improve it? And let's get some of these things done. Let's change the FAR. Let's change Clear and Cohen. Let's update some of these rules so that we can have quicker access. Now, we'd want to do full background checks on my friend, you know, and polygraphs and all kinds of fun stuff that we go through. I'm hopeful that the new administration is going to move towards becoming a little bit more agile. It's not rocket science. We just need people that are willing to say, let's just do it. Let's just get together and change the stuff and try to bring the right people and the right technologies in to solve these problems.
You're hopeful, but are you optimistic? Do you think it'll actually happen?
I'm hopeful.
All right. That's our time. Thanks, everybody.